Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wilson Center and to a conversation between Wilson Center President Ambassador Mark Green and General Laura J. Richardson, Commander of the United States Southern Command. I'm Bruna Santos. I direct the Brazil Institute here at the Wilson Center. And I want to start by saying that we all here at the Wilson Center, at the Brazil Institute, we extend our heartfelt solidarity to the people of Rio Grande do Sul in the south of Brazil who are confronting a historic flood, a climate disaster marked by severe floods and rainfall that has already displaced, killed, and may provoke one of the largest migration due to climate change we have seen so far. This catastrophic event represents also to us a moment to respond and to act and to tap into solidarity and cooperation in the region. And it's a moment to prove the world that democracies can deliver and respond to one of the most pressing issues of our century. And I commend the tireless effort of the local authorities, of the emergency responders, and the civil society volunteers. We all here stand in support and recovery. And today we are very grateful to have General Richardson with us, a four-star general. She has distinguished herself as a military leader from company to theater level and is a decorated combat veteran. Across her successful career, she has served along the entire trajectory of American power. She commanded an assault helicopter battalion in Iraq from 2003 to 2004, and also served as military aide to the vice president, as the Army's legislative liaison to the U.S. Congress, and as Army campaign planner at the Pentagon. In these later capacities, General Richardson has demonstrated a profound respect for the importance of civilian leadership in national security, a perspective that has greatly benefited the United States as she serves today as commander of the U.S. Southern Command. General Richardson has worked tirelessly to enhance and strengthen U.S. relationships with the many armed forces in the region, in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. In the process, she has underscored the multidimensional nature of security, while working with her military and security counterparts to address transnational crime, drug trafficking, and terrorism. General Richardson has also been an eloquent proponent of our hemisphere commitment to democracy and democratic institutions and practices, the need to address poverty, to address inequality, social exclusion, and the importance of economic empowerment and social development. General Richardson is an example of a keen understanding of the rapid globalization in our hemisphere and the attractiveness of having American democracies and open markets engaged with the world. Through her commendable work, she has shown that in a competitive and contested world, the U.S. becomes a partner of choice by making itself indispensable to the success of the well-being of its partners. So thank you, General Richardson, for being here with us. And to moderate the conversation, I'd like to invite Ambassador Mark Green, our president and CEO of the Wilson Center, who boasts a rich career spanning from government and non-governmental sectors. Notably, he served as the administrator of USAID from 2017 to 2008 to 2020, and held key leadership roles in organizations like the International Republican Institute and the McCain Institute. With 4 terms in Congress representing Wisconsin District, 8th District, his expertise is very vast and impactful. So join me in welcoming Mark Green to moderate this conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Bruna, for the kind words and the introduction. So, General, we heard an impressive introduction, but still, you're a soldier from Colorado. So why is it, as a soldier from Colorado, why should we care about security in Latin America and the Caribbean?
Well, I think thank you so much, by the way. I'll start off with that. Thank you for the introduction, Bruna. And Ambassador, thank you for moderating this today. And it's my honor to be here at the Wilson Center. And so why does this region matter? It's even in our national security strategy for the United States. It's a hemisphere with which we all live. And so being good neighbors and being good partners is very, very important. And I don't say that lightly. because there's a whole host when we think of partnerships and we think of neighbors. There's a whole laundry list of things that I think about regarding being a good neighbor. And I just take it from that ground roots perspective that we need to be good neighbors within the hemisphere within which we live. And so when I look at the 31 countries, 11 territories and dependencies that are in the region, this is a vast region. And our Department of Defense splits up the globe and divides the globe into 6 geographic areas. And this is one of the 6 areas. And I have the opportunity to be that combatant commander that represents our United States government in this region. And I feel so honored to be able to do that and to bring everything that the U.S. government has and does with all of its instruments of national power. And I find that what a great opportunity to be able to show how being a good neighbor really is by bringing all those instruments of national power together. We have in the Western Hemisphere my mantra and goal as part of our national security strategy and our national defense strategy for the United States is a free, secure, and prosperous Western Hemisphere. And so with that at the top of the list, everything that we do, a lot of times people think of the military as hard power and bringing hardware and soldiers and guns and violence and things like that from a military perspective. But quite honestly, I think it's the soft power piece. I mean, we have that. That's what, on the hard power side, that's what we get paid to do at the end of the day, is to win nations' wars if we have to. But the ability to do security cooperation in the United States Southern Command in this region and being able to use all of the levers of soft power is really, really tremendous. Bruna mentioned in her remarks about the floods that are happening currently in Brazil. Mm-hmm. These are horrible. As a result of climate change, you're getting flooding or you're getting droughts or you're getting both. And how are countries supposed to deal with this? It's overwhelming. And so working with our partners in the interagency, our USAID partnership, I have 3 USAID employees that work in the United States Southern Command, and the partnership that we have to team together on how do we help Brazil through this. Or I can mention the fires that just happened in Colombia, or the fires in Chile, or the very bad fires that happened a year ago in Chile. And so we've been helping Chile since last February, in terms of imagery and things like that help them be able to counter the fires when they come again. And so the preventive aspect of that, but the soft power piece of what we get that we get to do and are able to do, and then bringing the instruments of national power, because it might not be, as I mentioned, USAID. Yeah. I might not have the tools that are needed for this particular situation, but I know someone in the U.S. government who does, and we're going to go find them and then bring that capability to help. And so what an honor to be able to represent the United States government, represent the Western Hemisphere, the importance of this region as a soldier from Colorado.
Mm-hmm. From my USAID days, I can certainly testify to it. I think it's one of the undertold stories, the projection of disaster response and humanitarian power. DOD and USAID joined at the hip, making sure it gets there most effective, most efficient way possible. It's pretty remarkable. It's a story not told often enough. In the Southern Command's posture statement, you say that democracy and democratic values are under attack in the Americas. You note that the PRC, People's Republic of China, and Russia are condoning activities that undermine fragile democracies in Latin America. talk about that a little bit more, because that's something I've heard you talk about in other settings.
I think the what I've seen and being in this position for 2.5 years now, and traveling around to all of the countries, meeting with the leaders in the countries, it's very important for me. I study very hard before I go to each country, and then I keep up with that through all the things that are happening in the news and the media and the intelligence. But it's very important to understand from the leaders of the countries their perspective, because you fully can't appreciate or understand unless you see it through their eyes and their lens. And so meeting with leaders, extremely important to be able to do that. But as I see the challenges, I think COVID has really taken its toll on this region. And what I mean by that is the economies are hurting, anywhere from 8.5% GDP decrease to 18.5%. That's not every country. There were a couple countries that actually fared pretty well, but mostly in terms of relying on tourism and those sorts of things in this region, I think that's what started having to dig out of a hole with the economies. Mm-hmm. And now as you're trying to grow the economies, I think that the transnational criminal organizations have taken advantage of that. You have countries that haven't experienced the type of crime that's happening in the region as well. The police were not to the level that they're able to counter that. The military, in many cases, is being called in to help the police, which is really not the military's role. But what other choice is there, right? When there's a crisis, your presidents are having to do that in countries. And so you have this violence that's happening that countries haven't experienced before. You already have issues with the economies that are hurting and trying to dig out from COVID. And then the ability of malign state actors, as I call them, the PRC, the People's Republic of China, Russia, Iran, are able to come in and offer help because of the insecurity and instability to these fragile democracies. And so this vicious cycle, we have to help break that cycle. And so what I've tried to do, realizing that the instruments of national power from Team USA is absolutely present. Oh. And I use the acronym of DIME, diplomacy, information, military, and economics. They're all present, but they're just not integrated as much as they should be into the region together at the opportunities and the spots where the help is needed most. And so how do we bring all of that together when it's already there? And so I've worked very hard on the DIME, trying to bring those instruments of national power from Team USA in support of Team Democracy. And as fragile democracies are trying to deliver for their people, how do we help the democracies do that? It's very, very important as we see democracy under attack today. I firmly believe that. And I see these authoritarian regimes or these authoritarian leaders that run for presidents. In my mind, in some cases, use democracy to get elected and then dismantle democracy once they are elected. And so, but they come across like they're very strong. They're going to be able to fix things. Some have never governed before. And don't do so well once they're in the seat. Mm-hmm. And so how do you protect the institutions and the fragility of the democracies and the democratic institutions? We focus a lot on building partner capacity. Everything that we do in terms of the security cooperation, the training that we do is all based in human rights, the rule of law, the professionalization of the militaries. Not all countries in my region have militaries. They have public security forces, so it's the same things. And we work very hard to talk about the constitutions, the importance of honoring your constitution, what that means, because as you get into these gray areas when the military is called in to help the police during crises, and understanding their constitution and what it means to honor that constitution, not a person. right? And having those discussions. We have a human rights and have had a human rights office in the United States Southern Command for the past 26 years. Very proud of that. We have several countries that have signed on to the Human Rights Initiative, and it's non-binding. It's not a legal framework or anything. It's just a commitment that we're going to really take this human rights seriously, and have these types of discussions in our military forces.
So it sounds like you spend a fair bit of your time, again, 31 countries, listening. As you go around, it's because obviously each country is different. So,
Right.
I mean, 31 countries is a huge portfolio. So you have to spend time going country by country, listening and understanding what the needs are.
Right. And then just not talking about it.
Yeah.
The important part is then the follow through. So how do you go back and then double down and be able to help democracies deliver? Because a lot of these countries, I would say all of them, are on a stopwatch, not a calendar. Mm-hmm. And some of our processes I know in the Department of Defense weren't built when we had such stiff strategic competition. And so in my mind, I'm an athlete. When I was growing up, I was a competitive swimmer. And, you got to have your jersey on, you got to be on the field, you got to be playing in order to outcompete. And so, listening and all of these things, now you got to come back and figure out, okay, all right, I see what they need. How are we going to make our slow processes speed up and be faster and deliver for these leaders that are in the term normally for, in the seat for usually one term of 4 years. Mm-hmm. And some of our processes take a couple of years to deliver capability. And that's not the timeline that they're on. And so that's why I think it's really important to leverage all of the interagency and all of the U.S. government, utilize all the instruments of national power, diplomacy, information, military, and economics to see how we can deliver and help deliver.
I'd like to go a little bit further in talking about great power competition. We were talking about it before we came out. There are some who, when we talk about the era of great power competition, see it in very strict two-way terms. Talk about how the Southern Command and the countries that you work with, how they're in this sort of game of strategic competition. Why does, if we're focused on the growing power of China, why should we care about what's going on in the Caribbean or in South America?
So I look at the at our homeland, and our defense of our homeland is number one priority. And so, and again, so I go back to being a good neighbor, right? And what that means. You want to have good neighbors around, in your community and where you live. That's what we always want, right? And to be a good neighbor and want good neighbors, you got to be a good neighbor yourself. And so as we look at the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, and I look at that as, a lot of references given to in the Indo-PACOM region, the first and second island chain. Well, I would say that we have the first and second island chain to our homeland with the Caribbean and Central America and South America. And so if you really just replicate that, and you look at all of the investment in critical infrastructure by the People's Republic of China. They have the Belt and Road Initiative, and that is something that that 22 of 31 of the countries in the region have signed on to. That's a pretty significant number. The concern that I have as a military person is the investment in the critical infrastructure that's happening. And by these state-owned enterprises that are controlled by the government and that could be used for military application, flip the use, I call it dual use, and use those facilities, deep water ports, energy grids, 5G, safe city, smart city technology, space enabling infrastructure. And so why so much investment in this by the PRC in this region? It looks to be investment, but I'm a little suspicious that maybe it's for extraction as opposed to just investment.
And that actually, you've spoken a number of times about the interagency. So I've noticed that recently you joined forces with Secretary Raimondo of Commerce. You've traveled together, Costa Rica, Panama. How did that collaboration come about, and what sort of issues and projects are the two of you taking on together?
Well, I'm excited about the partnership, and last year at the big meeting that our Secretary of Defense and our Chairman of the Joint Chiefs hosts, invited Secretary Raimondo to come speak to all of us as our guest speaker. And shortly after that, a couple weeks later, I went to visit her in her office and lay out some of the challenges that we have in the region just in terms of strategic competition. And again, I go from being an athlete myself. You got to be on the field and you got to compete. You can't just complain about things happening sitting in the stands. And so, how do we get the E part of the instruments of national power focused on this region too? And so Secretary of Commerce and Department of Commerce with the CHIPS Act and everything that brings, semiconductor supply chain partnership, 2 of 7 countries are in my hemisphere. So Costa Rica and Panama are benefiting from that semiconductor supply chain and the investment through the CHIPS Act. And so I traveled with her to the hemisphere. She's been to Brazil, Panama, and Costa Rica. I traveled with her to Panama and Costa Rica. And we just went in March to Costa Rica regarding the rollout of the benefits for the CHIPS Act for Costa Rica, which I think is hugely helpful. And then we were also we from Team USA are on the Department of Defense side for US SOUTHCOM. We're making the announcements for helping them with port scanners, right? So security of the cargo coming in and out. Again, about data. I go back to 5G and the protection of data. We talked about the importance of protecting your data, the importance of having secure networks. I go back to the Belt and Road Initiative and the 5G and those sorts of things. Again, communist governments having the ability to control through state-owned enterprises, Huawei or ZTE, and the conversations that we have with countries, because if they have networks that are with these communist countries, then we can't share information. And so it's the protection of data. And as we know, our own FBI director, Ray, and the Five Eye intelligence chiefs have talked about that quite vigorously in terms of the stealing of data, the stealing of technology secrets, and the global PRC being the biggest threat to democracy that there is today. And so we really have to, I look at it like a call to action. You have folks that are saying this and continue to say this, and so just talking about how that impacts what we can do together as partners and in the partnership and as good neighbors, what that means. And so again, I go back to economies that are hurting, having to make a decision if they've already got a 3G or 4G backbone and upgrade to 5G at a relatively low cost, which is usually what the PRC does. That's a hard decision that they have to make. But again, it's about education and informing so they can make the right decisions. But I've been pretty vocal as well in terms of this region. And you look at, if we talk about the Economic Recovery Act of 1948 into Europe, which was called the Marshall Plan. And I really believe that we have a couple things that are in the works that are investment into the region and into the hemisphere. And so how do we help countries with hurting economies? We have a lot of U.S. companies. We have a lot of U.S. foreign direct investment into these countries as well. But why don't the leaders see it? Why are they not benefiting from it? This region has, and I believe, quite honestly, is feeding and fueling the world. I say that again, feeding and fueling the world. There was a lot of talk about this hemisphere doing that back in 2014. You don't hear a whole lot about that anymore. But when you look at all the resources that are here in this region, when you look at the heavy crude, the light sweet crude, the Amazon, 31% of the world's fresh water, 60% of the world's lithium, gold, copper, soybean, over 50% of the soybean for the globe is grown in this region, over 30% of the sugar and the corn. I think that really, quite honestly, this region is already feeding and fueling the world. They're just not benefiting from it. And so how do we help this region benefit from it? We see the migration numbers. They speak for themselves. I don't have to make a case for that. We see what it is. And the migration numbers, I've been to the migrant shelters in Colombia, Panama, Guatemala, and I ask families, where are you going? They say they're going to America. Why are you going to America? What is there that you can't find here or where you left? And they said, we want a home. We want to take care of our family. We want health care. We need food. And we would like a car. We would like the American dream. So how do we help this region benefit and realize this American dream and make it the America's dream? The migration is speaking for itself.
Yeah.
So how, again, do we help this region feed and fuel the world and
Well,
receive the benefits from that?
And one thing, just to sort of amplify what you've said, in my experience, when countries go with Chinese financing to do whatever the investment is, and you ask the head of state why, and they'll say, because you weren't there. And so what you're saying is making sure that we are there, not just with hard
Right?
power,
That
but
there are
with all that comes with
alternatives.
it.
Yeah.
And that's key. So we're talking about parts of the Americas that can help feed the world, fuel the world. And then there's Haiti, which is, I think, a challenge that we all recognize, a heartbreaking challenge that we all recognize. President Ruto of Kenya will be here, I think, next week. And I know the hope is that when he's here or while he's here, perhaps Kenyan security forces will be able to be on the ground in Haiti. Do you have an update for us? How's that going?
Well, I'm excited to be able to help Haiti. And everything that Haiti has to offer, all of the culture, all of the art. It is just amazing what Haiti has, all the great folks that Haiti has produced and professionals. I would say that everybody that leaves Haiti is very, very successful. So how do we help Haiti as an international community be successful? There have been many tries before. When are we going to be able to help Haiti where Haiti is satisfied and be able to, so I'm just really excited to get started. We've already started, and United States Southern Command's contribution to this is to provide the logistics and sustainment for the multinational force, the Kenyans that'll come in, and for this mission. And for them to be able to augment the Haitian National Police, they don't, the HNP, I'll say, use the acronym, Haitian National Police for the HNP, don't have the capacity. They have hung on strong. Very, very proud of them. The armed forces is much smaller than the size of the police force. They have also done very well. A lot of focus on getting the airport back open. It's been closed since early March. And so we've been flying military aircraft in there to get the material on the ground to build up the logistics that are required for the Kenyans to be able to operate and support the Haitian National Police. They've done, the HMP and the armed forces have done a tremendous job establishing the increased security at the airport. But now that's just the start. We've got to get the Kenyans in there give the HNP and the Kenyans, they'll have the capacity then to be able then to get the port open, right? The port is sporadically open, but it's not consistent. And so to be able to get food in there, healthcare, fuel, all of the commodities that they got to get in there and get redistributed around the country would be next. And so being able to do that, I think the transition, what they call the TPC, the Transitional Presidential Council, that's been established. They're getting legs under them to be able to set up the elections and everything. So everything is moving along, and I think that as soon as the Kenyans get on the ground and be able to reinforce
Is it on track for next couple of weeks?
I think it is on track, absolutely. We'll be ready to go on the 23rd of May.
Okay.
And
Next
so,
week, that's great.
Next week. And we've been working very, very hard. And again, I think that everybody's got to be hopeful and positive, and looking at this as, we're going to make this happen this time to be successful.
And the deployment of Kenyans, is that a limited term, or is it?
That depends on how the leaders see that. So I'll leave it to the two presidents to figure that out. But we're excited that we've got the support to be able to provide that capacity from the Kenyans for the country of Haiti.
And U.S. contributions in terms of personnel?
And in terms of
Uniformed?
on uniformed personnel, so limited uniformed personnel will be doing the logistics and sustainment through a government contract. And the international community and countries from the region are putting forward their contributions in terms of forces and police forces and training and those sorts of things to help. And so I think that that's very important. Again, not everybody has everything that's needed, and so those contributions are really, really important. And really happy that countries in the Western Hemisphere are coming forward and offering that. I think that's very important.
80% of Port-au-Prince is currently, and hopefully that's beginning to change already, but under the control of gangs. Is that sort of the priority? Obviously, as you mentioned, the airport and the port, but is that the focus, the capital, and trying to get the gang influence under control?
They'll make the decisions, the government of Haiti, and as they work with the capacity in terms of the critical infrastructure that's already been taken over from the gangs and the prioritization of that. They'll work through all of that to determine what needs to happen first and those sorts of things. And so I will leave it to them to figure that out, and I think they have a good way ahead. And but again, I think that this promise of getting this all back on track will happen very soon.
As you look out over the region, what are the biggest challenges that you see?
I would say the investment, the partnership is really important. Windows of opportunity open, and we have to be ready to respond to that. As countries, all sovereign countries, very, very proud of their history. As they ask for help, we've got to be there. It can't be that we're not there. And again, as we talked about already, the alternatives, you got to have alternatives. If you're going to compete, you got to have something to offer. So how do we, again, help democracies deliver on a timeline for these leaders that are in the seat for such a short time?
Yeah.
And so understanding that, I think, is really important. Again, seeing it through their eyes and through their lens. And then that's why I work so hard across the interagency, because we have so much to offer. And so it's just really getting it pointed in the right direction and the right place and creating those partnerships. I have a meeting this afternoon with Secretary Yellen from Department of Treasury. I have some recommendations of how I think we can partner better together too. And so really excited about that. Talked with Secretary Blinken a week ago. And we have, as I go back to maybe like a strategy, a Marshall Plan for the region, We have the American Partnership for Economic Prosperity, APEP, and hosted 11 Latin American leaders at the White House for a week in November of 23. So just a few months ago. And billions of dollars in critical infrastructure projects through the Inter-American Development Bank, Development of Finance Corporation. And so I think that is a good start. And so how do we expand that? Is that strategy that we're looking for? And so, again, it's just bringing that attention of consolidation of things together to benefit the countries.
General, I believe we have a couple of audience questions. I'll turn things over to my Chief of Staff, Eddie Acevedo.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'll use this one. Thank you. We have just a few questions from the crowd. I'm going to start here with Ambassador Vecchio.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you. Good to see you, General Richardson. It's an honor.
Ambassador. Thank
Welcome
you.
to D.C. And also, I could say that I've been witness at firsthand the support that you are giving to the Venezuelans, migrants, particularly in the region, providing humanitarian aid, and also sending U.S. comfort many times through the region to support them. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So I have seen that. I would like to hear your views on the conflict between Guyana and Venezuela. Maduro has been escalating, military actions against Guyana. So do you think that this is something that Maduro is building in order to find an excuse probably to suspend the election, the coming election, presidential election, or do you see actually a potential military conflict? So I would like to hear your views on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And so I would hope, now we know hope's not always a method, but I would hope as a military leader that this is solved diplomatically and the elections that are scheduled for the 28th of July actually occur. And that would be, and if there's, the free and fair elections, and then what happens after that, be diplomatic, be democratic, those sorts of things. And so that would be top of the list. The saber rattling that Venezuela is doing towards Guyana, that is uncalled for. And I really appreciate Brazil's role in this too, because they have been a very important partner in the neighborhood in terms of being good neighbors and what is happening between that Venezuela is doing to Guyana. And so the hope would be, and number one priority would be, is that this is solved diplomatically. And as we know that this is a huge humanitarian crisis for Venezuela that has happened. 7.5 million people have come out of that country. As I mentioned, the migrant shelters that I visited that are full of people. And as I go around and talk to different families and people, 95% of them are from Venezuela at every single place.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Mary Beth Long, former Assistant Secretary at DOD for International Affairs.
Lovely meeting you, General. Thank you, Mark, so much for the invitation. I spent the majority of my misbegotten youth as a CIA case officer in your AOR, and then was the DASD for counter narcotics, and then so for me, SOUTHCOM is home. Many of these problems have been persistent for decades, and I wanted to focus for just a moment on Colombia. Colombia is suffering so much from what's happening in Venezuela. It seems to bear a lot of the burdens of the gangs. We got over the hump with the Plan Colombia with counter-narcotics and the threats that it posed, but still Colombia seems to be almost the bellwether of the good neighbor, good partner perception of the U.S. in the region. So could you update us on how Colombia is doing, how SOUTHCOM is doing, and how do we move from great neighbor to even better partner, particularly with such important countries like
Right.
Colombia. Thank you, General.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service. So Colombia, our military-to-military relationship continues to be very, very strong. And as we work with Colombia and continue to work the exchanges and the exercises and the engagements that we do, very, very strong partnership. And the relationship couldn't be stronger, to be quite honest with you. And so, and in fact, Plan Colombia, so successful, and our U.S.-Colombia action plan that we continue to execute in SOUTHCOM along with Colombia. But the Plan Colombia is used as an example. In Ecuador, and the crises that Ecuador had recently in the December-January timeframe. And what about other Plan Ecuador, other plans? That's why I talk about a strategy. I talk about an investment into the countries that desperately need this. And so how do we keep from happening what happened in Ecuador, for example? Because I would say that with the insecurity and instability and the wave of crime that's just all of a sudden come out of nowhere, how do we help countries invest in their police and their military to be able to handle what's happening? As opposed to, the PRC showing up or the Russians showing up with, again, communist governments acting like they're there to help. But how do we have to have an alternative to that. So I would say that as I go to Colombia here in a couple weeks and help them with some bridges that they asked for our help with as a result of the climate change and the El Nino. They had horrible floods several months ago, and so we're helping with donating some bridges to them that they'll be able to put into the indigenous communities where they had these bridges wiped out. And so, again, part of that soft power, but the hard power too, right? And being able to facilitate Colombia with the challenges that they have with the terrorist organizations and the transnational criminal organizations. But our relationship remains very, very strong. And thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to the legendary Ambassador John Negroponte.
Hello, General.
Hello, sir.
What can I do after that introduction? Maybe I ought to quit while I'm ahead. Nice to meet you, and I want to commend you for your Iraq service. I think I arrived there as ambassador shortly after you left. I was there 2004, June, July. I don't know which time frame you were there, but I think it was around there. So
That was around there.
yeah,
Exactly
yeah.
right.
I was even flown around one time by a helicopter, an Army helicopter that was crewed entirely by women. I thought it was very impressive.
Very good.
Well, I got there and back. Honduras, Central America, I was ambassador there back in the Reagan administration. And it's just such a pity to look at what's happened to Central America over the years with the gangs and everything else. So now there's some hopeful signs in El Salvador, not without their own controversy, but can you give us how do you see Central America, given all that we did and tried to do about Central America during the Reagan administration? And lastly, I'm really glad to hear you talk about good neighbor, because it seems to me that Franklin Roosevelt really set our policy towards this hemisphere a long time ago, 90 years ago. And I think it's as valid today as it was then. Good neighbor. It's not that hard to say.
That's right. You're exactly right, and thank you for the question. And so Central America, all of the promise, I was just in Guatemala 3-4 weeks ago and met with the entire leadership of the Guatemalan government. Very happy to have that democracy that's in place there in Guatemala. Very important that we help that democracy succeed and be there for the challenges and be there to help them through some of the challenges, the insecurity challenges that they have. And I have a whole laundry list of things from my side of the house on the M side. And Honduras. I just look at all of Central America and the teamwork, though. We just had our Central American Security Conference as well, where we had all the chiefs of defense in Guatemala from the Central American region, as well as all of our allies. I've signed a Western Hemisphere framework with our allies that work in the region, too. That's Canada, the UK, France, and the Netherlands, because they're there operating because of their relationships and ties to the region, too. And it was we call it the Western Hemisphere framework just because we need to work better together, right? And are we really coordinating all the different types of things that we could do? Again, we're more powerful. Individually, the Minister of Public Security for Panama says, he has this quote, individually we're strong, but together we are invincible. And that's really, really true. You're way more powerful together, operating together. And when we have 28 of 31 countries in the region that are like-minded democracies, we have to work better together as part of team democracy. And so in Central America, being able to work very, very closely, and then the countries working cross-border too with each other is very important, because all the countries are facing the same sort of challenges. It's on just different levels. And so if they can, I look as not having their borders be a seam, but do cross-border operations, having that trust between the governments to be able to do that, because I think that's where sometimes the criminal organizations flourish, is right there on the seams of the borders, in the riverine system, and those sorts of things. We have an initiative that we started in SOUTHCOM, and I'm really excited about it, but it's called it has maintenance in it. Sometimes maintenance isn't very exciting to other people, but it's exciting to me. And we call it the Theater Maintenance Partnership Initiative, or TMPI. And it's to create 9 centers of excellence in the region. And for example, like ground maintenance for vehicles, or rotary wing maintenance for helicopters. We have 51 C-130s in the hemisphere. That's a lot. Why don't we get those up to NATO standards and then be able to have them help out, be able to fly more often? The maintenance initiative goes from the tactical level, the wrench turners, right, up to the ministry level to anticipate and be able to anticipate logistics and sustainment before your equipment is broken. And then you think, oh, how am I supposed to fix this? It's anticipatory, so it's already developed. The centers of excellence embed within the military academies that are already established for those countries' militaries. And then the rest of the region will be able to come there to do the training from the tactical level up to the operational level in terms of the logistics. And so 7-year program, 9 centers of excellence, partnering with that particular country in that specific maintenance function. And then they become an exporter of the training as well. And then what I'd like to do eventually is working with SecDef's logistics advisors to get a couple depots in the region too, where we have large concentrations. We have a very robust foreign military sales, right? We've got lots of U.S. equipment, but this helps the countries with readiness, right? Because it doesn't help to have them purchase equipment, or we donate equipment and then it's broke, right? Does them no good. It doesn't do the hemisphere any good, right, with the challenges that they have. So being able to increase that readiness. So really excited for that program. Couple depots, bringing jobs to the countries, just thinking about how can we can team together with synergy and things like that to help the hemisphere. So that's an example of, we're on the 2nd year of the 7-year program for the Theater Maintenance Partnership Initiative. But the countries are really excited about it. I'm really excited about it. And I think that the readiness will improve dramatically.
Great, and we have time for just one quick last question. Today's event was titled Preserving and Strengthening Democracy in Latin America. And I'm very proud to say we have a few former political prisoners from Nicaragua who are here with us. Felix, I know you had one question.
General, first of all, thank you for your leadership and for your service. It's good to see you again. As a former Secretary General of the Defense Ministry in Nicaragua during the democratic years, it's painful to see all the wonderful support that my country received during the times of Generals James T. Hill and other SOUTHCOM commanders in building a democratic army. And the support was mostly channeled through CEFAC. But now we see a Russian training center in Managua recently sanctioned, actually yesterday. The Nicaraguan army actually advocating for an increasing presence of China and Russia within the Central American Confederation of Armies, CEFAC. I'd like to hear your opinion on how the U.S. and their allies should address Russian and Chinese interference in Central America through the Nicaraguan army in particular. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think you're rightly so concerned about that. And that concerns me too, is when you have, partnerships that develop. I think the malign activity just attracts more malign activity, right? And it becomes a safe haven for additional malign activity or criminal organizations and those sorts of things to be able to flourish and be able to operate out of. And so as a hemisphere, how do we address that, right? Because I think it has to be addressed. It has to be addressed as a problem that affects the region, not just how it impacts the United States or something like that, right? And I think as partners, we have to come together and we have to offer an alternative too. What is a way that we can offer something better than what the Russians are offering Nicaragua, right? And so very concerning. I don't like it. More malign activity just again attracts more malign activity and makes it harder for the region to prosper. And so it's a cancer, and the cancer spreads. And so we have to, but again, we have to be there, and we have to come up with alternatives for that.
Thank you, General. I would like to ask everyone to give General Richardson, Ambassador Green, a round of applause. Thank you so much. This is probably the first and only time we have had two competitive swimmers on stage here at the Wilson Center. I will say, General, as also a good neighbor here at the Wilson Center, I'm very pleased. I want to acknowledge our USAID colleagues who are here. Ambassador Sarah Lynch, who's now with you at SOUTHCOM, but before she was with you, she was with us when we were at USAID, and also Rob Jenkins, who for many years had oversight over the civil relationship between USAID and the combatant commands. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.